Good evening. Welcome to Community and Technology, where we connect the global community with news, information, and resources that we hope will help improve your life. This is our special UBI broadcast that we do every month with my UBI co-hosts, Diana Blackwell and Enno Schmidt. Welcome, guys. And we have a very special guest who is not a stranger to our airways. He's been on our show before, Sarath Davala from India. Welcome.
Thank you, Stu. Lovely to be back again with you.
Absolutely. Sarath has written extensively about a basic income, and in particular, he has a really strong analytical piece where he breaks down just the whole geopolitical climate and some crises that he has identified that we're all aware of, but he's tied it into UBI. So, Sarath, if you could just kind of summarize that for us as a way to introduce the subject.
Yeah, Stu, hi everyone. Hi, Diana and Enno. There's a tendency sometimes for politicians and policymakers to make appeal and the plea for basic income into some kind of a scheme, an income security scheme. But I think it's important that we should go a little deeper into what we are facing, what as humanity we are facing, the global economy is facing in terms of what kind of crises have reached their tipping point, right? I think I just see it as three major crises coming together. And basic income is not necessarily a solution to all of them, but I think it is one response that is going to build a global economy and all national economies much more resilient. The first is there is an employment and welfare crisis globally. I think this whole process started way back in the 90s, where I think the business models all over the world have been to contractualize and make flexible employment. What was a golden era of having full employment, having a stable and a permanent employment with a retiring, with a pension and all that, I think has been very successfully dismantled. Today, what we see emerging as is a gig economy where I think insecurity, income insecurity, job insecurity, everything is built into our life. It's implicit in the way our economies are growing all over the world. I think it's as true in the developing economies as it is in the OECD countries. So there is and the existing welfare system is not able to cope with the new developments. It's not an answer. Existing welfare system is an answer to questions, problems of the 20th century, not the 21st century. There is a mismatch. In this mismatch, I think it's the people who get sacrificed and their lives that get sacrificed. I think there is a denial happening on the part of the governments and the policymakers that they don't want to see this mismatch. The second is also, obviously, all of us know that there is an ecological crisis. And that ecological crisis, I think many countries have actually declared there is a climate emergency. I think I was reading somewhere that we have just 3,000 days now, and we have to count them before something happens that will be irreversible. So I think one is taking stock of the situation. I think there is something that we need to do about it. And the third crisis I talk about is an ethical moral crisis. This is a crisis created, I think it's evident so much more in the early democracies and the European and the American society, particularly in the OECD countries, what we call the advanced capitalist societies, where I think there is a serious question of the meaning of life. And I think capitalism is very, very strongly promoting, encouraging hyper-consumerism. And hyper-consumerism is bad for human life, is bad for the planet. I think that's in that sense, it is all interrelated. Now, the reason I say basic income can be one solution pathway, because basic income can at least provide a ground for people to stand on. And I think when we have whole lot of people, 80%, 90% of the population, with an insecure mind, what we call the precaritized mind, living a very precarious life, I think it actually leads to a collective illness. We become a sick, ill society. We can't be a society of well-being. So it is the individuals that make a healthy society. Healthy individuals means healthy families, means healthy households, means healthy communities, mean a healthy society. I think by ignoring, we are pushing, like the way I think cities push invisibilize poverty, any visuals of visible poverty, they push it back into the background so that everything looks prosperous. So similarly, there is an underclass which is actually in such a bad shape, we just deny that something like that exists. So I think giving a basic income is a very good starting point. I feel that I don't mind being called an alarmist. Some people try to say it's you're an alarmist, but I feel that we are on the brink, and I think we need to step back on the way we have lived as nations, communities, and individuals. So a basic income provides a foundation on which people stand, a solid ground. I think that will definitely result in a mind that is relatively stabler than it is today. I think material conditions are extremely important. It is not just about an income scheme, but I think humanity needs. There are no jobs in the future. I think that is very, very evident. I think even if there are jobs, they're all bad jobs, very precarious jobs. So if you divide all jobs into good jobs and bad jobs, I think good jobs are there for a microscopic minority, what we call the salariate and the proficients, people who are professionals, a very, very small minority, which is wealthy and working for the wealthy. And the rest of the mankind seems to be having these bad jobs. I think we have to find a way out, because when you're in a bad job, you're ill and you live an unhealthy life. So that's it. So in short, the long and short of this, about how I put the whole basic income in the global perspective.
So may I add a point?
Yeah.
I think the conception of work is so important to consider. You mentioned that there's decreasing full employment since the 80th or 90th of the last century. And this has two sides. The one side is, okay, more insecurity, more precariat. But the reason for that bad results and impacts is not the history in itself, because it's more freedom to change your jobs, to be more free to do what you can do, your capabilities in relation to that company than to that company in projects. It is for people, it's not necessarily bad, but can be more freedom. But if we don't aware what it means for people in regard to an income, then it is horrible for the people. And this is the same what has happened in the 19th century when industrialization grows up, and people did not consider where those many workers in the new industries and companies are living, how they are living, how they lose their social contacts and so on. It was not thought about the people, and that made war. It made civil war, it made the huge wars we have had. And that is the same of today. So if we don't understand, if those people who should be intelligent enough to aware that we need a new income situation to free people to work what they really want to do and to contribute to society, in particular, or for example, to do things to work on climate change, to stop that, work for the environment, work in a neighborhood for other people in social relationships, then we have the situation, because of a lack of understanding, a lack of awareness, a lack of willingness to think about the situation, that makes a horrible crisis. On the other hand, this can be good for people to have a stable income, of course, unconditional, because it's an unconditional right to live, and everybody needs an amount of an income that is sufficient to live. If we give that, then the situation, also a situation of digitization, is a good one, because so many work is done by machines and software and computers and so on. But we need a stable basis to decide what should be digitized and what not, and what is our work. So we have to look to a definition. What is human work? What is the conception of work in our times? And not at last, what is the conception of human being compared to a robot that can do everything, but what is the difference to a human being? I think this is the core questions linked to an unconditional basic income. And that's what you always see when you talk about it, or also the audience, people listening now, when you talk to your friends, your neighbors about the unconditional basic income, immediately you will see this is a cultural issue. People say, oh no, people become lazy, people become that, it's not to finance, all that stuff. So that means we have in particular a cultural crisis that we are not aware, and we don't face the situation we are living in, and we don't look to the good solutions. We stick on old habits.
Yeah, I certainly agree with that. From where I sit, we measure so much of our progress in terms of economics as opposed to human values, and I think that's is working against us in so many ways. And I know that Sarath has also talked about how technology, even though it's heralded as in some ways a savior for society, but in fact it's exacerbated some of the problems. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that, Sarath, and how we might be able to turn that around, or how it needs to be turned around.
Yeah, I was talking about the business models, Stu. I think in a very simplistic way, if we look at the old business model, was where an entrepreneur would take risk, and he would provide a relatively stable labor conditions and employment. And then, so there was a kind of a trade-off. But now the new business models are passing on the risks to the employees rather than the businessman himself or herself take. Because I think so technology and all the benefits of technology, even as the consumers are being given the so-called benefits of technology, I think the most appropriation of this technology is happening to a small group of people are enjoying the benefits of technology. As I was saying last time, I think a technology is something that accumulates over a period of over centuries. I think it is a contribution of any number of generations, several generations of scientists and thinking people. I think so. It is a human inheritance. So I think what we are seeing today, and progressively more and more so, is that a handful of people are completely saying that this belongs to us. It's because of us, which is not the case. I think there is a need, I'm sure people will, to liberate technology from the clutches of a handful of people. I was mentioning, I think people like Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, who have created these apps and created these programs, they think that they own this technology. I think as humanity, we need to do something about it if we can make technology so the technology today is in a position to do so much of work that I think the entrepreneur, the employer is saying that I don't want to depend on human beings. I was talking about Stephen Hawking said that if that technology belongs to everybody, I think humanity can look at it as an opportunity rather than as a threat. We won't lose jobs. I think good if bad jobs go away, but I think technology is capable of generating wealth. Like today, I think capital generates more capital and labor is hardly able to generate a decent wage. I think that is the kind of today's 21st century human condition, that what capital is able to do, technology is able to do for some people. I think with all my human labor, I'm not able to do for myself and my family. I think this is a serious crisis. And then ideologically making me into a consuming animal, a consumerist animal, converting our society into a consumerist society. But like you said, Stu, that measuring progress in economic terms, I think we also measure individual prosperity, well-being in terms of what we own, what we consume. So I think if our leisure, we're all the time consuming. I think a leisure today means not simply not doing anything. It's not like the Sabbath. Sabbath, you're not supposed to do anything. No, you're supposed to just be still, no work. But today's leisure, the way we have defined, is to go and consume more, consume travel, consume, go to nightclub. So consume more is the model. And then economists say that if you don't consume, then there's no economic growth, and everything depends on consumption. So what kind of hell have we gotten ourselves into? I mean, where does this end? How does it end? So I think we have to take stock of this situation and the alarming proportions, alarming situation that we are in. So. I mean, that's the question for the policymakers. That's the question for the global, I don't know if we can use a word, that people who can see that far into the future, prophets, to say that, we have to make amends. I think all through centuries, we have had people who could see into the future and alert mankind. I think we have arrived at that kind of a time. I think we need to take stock and make amends.
Diana.
Diana, you're on mute.
Unmute yourself, Diana.
Sorry. I said, I like what you were saying. You were talking about that small handful who's kind of being the deterrent, on how things are going to go. But in saying that, you're realizing that small handful is making poverty a business. So it's going to be very difficult for them to really release that, even though everything you're saying is absolutely true. And we do need to really share the wealth. There is enough wealth for us, but how do we persuade that small minority that there is equity in everything we do here, even going forward with technology? So I'm going to just leave it there.
By not accepting the narrative that the goal and meaning and sense of economy is to make private profit, no longer accepting this ideology. As long as we all accept that and we all say the same thing, the goal, the purpose, the meaning of economy is making profit for the owners. As long as we all accept that and say and tell the same story, those guys are right. They do the right thing. So you look to the pharma industry. If profit is the goal of a private company, then it is right to create diseases, to have pharmacy for diseases, to bound people to the pharma industry by diseases in the young age, and this medical care, medicals for that, and so on. And then it's right to become very rich and to make poverty to a business. This is all absolutely correct and right, as long as we all believe in that stupid lie and nonsense that economy is making profit. So the truth is, and that's what I said, as long as we do not think with our own brain, and as long as we are too lazy to aware, to perceive what is real and the truth. As long as that happens, we should not talk about all the problems, because they are results, automatic results of our laziness not to look for ourselves. If you look yourself to what economy is, everybody listening now, do it now. Look to what is work. Work is that you do things for others. Economy is that we all do good things for all each others, that we work together for the benefit of other people. That it is what economy is. Because of that reason, it's a very important part of our society. It is the social field of our society. So this is the truth. If you perceive what is really happening, if you are not living in two worlds, one world is what you are doing with no thinking. The other is that you tell the stories you learned in the school or in the TV or wherever, and you tell this story. And you have no bridge between your experience, what you're really doing. You are really doing your whole life, doing things for others. You always want to do things to be good for others. That is what work is. But you don't bring it together. So these are the problems. And this is absolutely linked to an unconditional universal basic income. Because if you think this, you need to bring together your own awareness. You need to think by yourself. Otherwise, you cannot understand why unconditional. Why is it universal? You cannot understand that. You need to think, to rethink economy, to rethink the conception of work, to rethink what is the social field in society. It's not social benefits from the state. So this is mostly unsocial. This is mostly hurting the people. It is depressing people, and so on and so on. The social field is the economy, and the ideology that economy is for the profit for the few who owns the companies. Well, this is very comfortable when the people believe this lie. They believe it. It's just power. It's only power, nothing else. It has nothing to do with truth, nothing to do with what it is in real. But people are believing in it. And we should stop believing all the stories we are told. So that is the beginning of the exploitation of the poor and make poverty to a business, that the people believe this. They believe it, they don't think about it. So, okay, yeah, then sorry for that, but then you are in the threshold and the paper basket. You have to stand up with your own thinking, right? And that's unconditional basic income.
Just to add to what you said, I think there's also another side, interesting side to the technology. Now, I find a lot of young people really want to, for example, if you take the blockchain technology, you take many of these technologies, I think a lot of people want to now put everything on open source. Which means that I think there is a potential for subverting this empire with the technology that has become accessible to almost everybody now. Now, just take an example of something like Wikipedia. How did Wikipedia come about? Who owns it? Who makes profit out of it? Is it not a community sourced and community-based and open source thing? I mean, it has completely destroyed Britannica and destroyed all the encyclopedias, everything. So I think that's a fantastic example that gives hope to me that if really communities take over, I think nobody is asking for money when they contribute to, they contribute to, but then when you contribute to Google Maps, I think Google is making a lot of money, but it doesn't recognize and pay the. So when you are making money, why don't you share? But Wikipedia is not making money. It's you're happy to contribute. I mean, see, that belongs to, that symbol belongs to the future care society that we dream of. Like what Enno was saying, that the COVID has taught us one important thing, that we are real social creatures. We can do a lot on Zoom, but going out and meeting people face to face and hugging them, is such a human necessity, such a need. I think the future is going to be a hybrid of Zoom plus real life meeting of people. So I think there is an opportunity in technologies, and I think we have to, in a care society, we relate to others, whether it is maybe a part of it can be for a wage, but a lot of it can be for just for the sake of you being a human and you having what is called the 4-letter word love inside you, and wanting to relate to people, wanting to connect with people. I mean, connect with sadness, connect with mirth, connect with everything around me, with people around me. So I think we are talking about that kind of a care society too.
Okay, just a quick break. This is Community and Technology, our special UBI, Unconditional Basic Income segment show with my co-host Diana Blackwell and Enno Schmidt, special guest Sarath Davala. This is WHCR 90.3 FM. Sarath, you're talking about the care economy or the care age. Can you elaborate a little bit about that? I think we've been talking around that redefining, as Enno is talking about redefining economy, where it's not the benefit of the few, but the benefit of the many. And I think that kind of dovetails into what you are calling the age of care, Sarath. Can you just kind of elaborate a little bit about, what that is and how we are moving in that direction, if we are?
Okay, I feel that I also echo what Enno's kind of thinking also is that essentially we are, as human beings, we are caring beings. I think that's there deep inside all of us. I think it may come express it, we may express it, it may come out in certain particular contexts in our life cycle, but I think there is the tremendous capacity. Last time, I don't know whether I was talking about, have you ever seen a lazy mother who has an infant in her arms? No lazy mother. I think there is that innate capacity that we have. Now, what has happened? I think there is a lot has happened because of the atomized individual life we conceive as the primary thing. Actually, no. I think in rural societies, even in urban settings, when I go to the slums and I talk to people, the more I talk to them, the more I realize that I think individual is a kind of invention in a certain sense. I think it's a kind of a myth. I won't discount its significance in terms of the rights bearing. Rights come to, an individual has rights. It's not the household that has rights. But at the same time, we should also recognize the fact that this individual can survive only in a relational way, not in just like as an individual. It's only through relationality that the individual finds his or her fulfillment. Now that relationality, I think the market comes and really makes it sick. I think market actually is determining too much of what we think, the narrative that is talking about. So I think if we can move away from this wretched highway of hyper consumerism, that mentality, I think it is possible to discover another better life. I think when I say care society, I think it is not new attributes that you have to learn to build that society, that every individual is already capable of doing that. For example, I think we probably discussed this last time, saying that, like the way religion has been privatized, that it's your private business. It's not something you should bring it to the public domain. Similarly, all your love, you should do it only with your spouse and with your child and with maybe if you have enough energy with your grandmother, but it's in private space, you do all that. In public space, talk about contract, market, and conditionalities and all that. But I think this is the care society. When I say care society, I say that we should drag this love into the public square. I think it's important to express that, we call it solidarity, but solidarity as a class, but solidarity as an individual to another individual. I think that connecting is the revival that we need, the connecting unconditionally with another. So I mean, when I say care society, that's exactly what I mean, Stu. And I think this should reflect even in the policymakers. I think, why do we say unconditional? The underclass that is not capable of participating in the labor market, should it simply die because it cannot participate in the labor market? It is in a suboptimal health situation. I think a care society would not do that. A care society would make participation in the labor market optional. If you want to participate, yes, go and participate. But if you don't want to participate, you have the freedom not to participate in the labor market. If the labor market is too harsh and cruel, you don't want to participate and you want to lead a simple minimum life, I think you should have the freedom to say, yes, I want to lead a simple minimum life. I think those are the choices care society would end. That's what the meaning of a care society is. All this ethos should reflect in the policymakers, and they should see the value of a care society, why a healthy individual builds a healthy society, and why a healthy society is a more productive society. It can be more innovative society, and it can be a more creative society. I think though that's kind of a complex. So we need to retreat from the kind of patterns we have built and the faith we repose in this mega narrative of hyper consumerist life. I think that's not good for the soul of man, woman, and child, but it's not good for the society as well, not good for the planet, definitely not. If we don't realize this now consciously, I think the planet itself is going to tell us that you have to change.
Yeah,
well, I think this is a lack of idea, the lack of the idea, what's now? Because we have everything we need and much, much more, everything for luxury life and everything. There's an abundance. So there's no scarcity, but there's no idea what's when there is no scarcity. So we are used to live with scarcity thousands of years, but since, let's say, 60 years, something like that, there's no scarcity. We have everything. We don't need the people to work in the companies in that high numbers. We need only a few in that. But we have new challenges. For example, climate change. For example, the crisis of social relationships. So we have an increasing awareness and sensibility for soul, for the problems of the soul. Mental problems, mental challenges, partnership challenges. That all was not that topic 100 years ago. That was just running. But we are beings, and we develop. So we develop to more sensitivity, more individual needs and demands, and that's good. So, and that is that we have enough to eat, shelter, everything. It's enough. It's much, much more. We don't need to work for that in that huge number. We need to come to new ideas, what society is, what value is, what work is for human beings, and so on and so on. So this work has to be done. And the horrible story, the real terroristic story, is to keep people busy with in the same patterns, with the same goals, with the same values like 80 years ago. So that is cruel. That is really horror. To keep people busy in things that are no longer needed, in structures that are no longer fitting with the present. To put people in that. So that is a cruel story of today. on the one hand, we are living in a wonderful world. We are really free. We have everything we need. We are free to do the things we really appreciate the most and think that's the most necessary thing to do with my capabilities. We are free. But on the other hand, the rules, the laws, the understanding, the structures are sticking in the past, saying, no, 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 you cannot do what is valuable for the world. You cannot do what is valuable for yourself and your surrounding and environment. You have to do a job for money, even if that destroys the world, even if it's absolutely nonsense, nobody needs it. It's just nothing. You have to do it because we stick on the principle only for a paid job you get an income to live. You get the right to live only if you do what somebody is telling you to do, and you get money for that. So this is so stupid, people cannot believe it, but that's the truth. It is so stupid to say you get money only if you have a paid job. It is so unhuman. It is so far from education, far from intelligence, but we believe it. Because it is somehow, I don't know, it is in our genes, it's our habit. So, okay, yeah, I understand that. But that is, finally, it is the rest of slavery, you know. And we have to understand that slavery is not gone. It is abolished in some way in the United States and other countries, but it's still, the mentality of slavery is still living in my brain, in your brain. Everybody has it. So, and that is to say, nobody should be free. You have to do what you are told to do. And the force, the pressure put on you is that you will die if you don't do that. So you need an income, you have to do what you are told to do. And your freedom and your decision, what is valuable, your own perception, where you are the most important one in the world at that specific point, forget it. No, it's only for those who are called the elites, and they decide about. This is still in our thinking. And again, even if it's uncomfortable to hear it or to say it again and again, it is necessary to think by yourself and to believe on your own perceptions and your own awareness, to believe you yourself. That is so important today, to believe that you understand the world, not those who tell you what to do. You have this capacity. And that again is the same, like this gift from heaven, an unconditional basic income. So not the money is a gift from heaven, but the idea is a gift from heaven, that we can, because you see, an unconditional universal basic income says to you, whether you get it or not, but you feel that, you will feel that, you are welcome. You are a human being. You are appreciated. You have the right to live. So now I'm asking you, what's the interesting thing of you? But at first, there's the appreciation. At first, there's welcome on earth. Welcome in our society. Nice to have you here. That's so good, so good. Here's the basic income, lifelong. Well, people feel that. And this is a basis to start to believe in yourself and your thinking and your perception. And you're welcome.
Diana, you wanted to chime in on that? After you unmute yourself?
I love it. I'm sorry. Okay. I love what I'm hearing, but I'm going to take it just a little bit further because when we think of UBI, I also think of what we have are doing here in the United States, which is guaranteed income, which takes on a different structure. And this structure almost knocks down everything that you're talking about, the freedom to really be free. Because what it does, it puts someone over the work of UBI or guaranteed income, and it adds restrictions to it, such as timelines. So we're going to do a pilot for about 4 or 5 years. And in this pilot, we're only going to target people that have extremely low income. And all of this is so structural that it really takes everything that we're talking about and puts it on the side. When it's done, whether they finish their 5-year project, People may have created something. Some of them may have escaped and really are have created an entrepreneurship, or they're standing on their own, going to school and found a way. But there's those that need a little more time. But the structure says we only going to give you 3 to 5 years to live with this money and this income. So how do we begin to combat that? Because we're talking about a freedom, because we have an income to be free and create, but we have rules, just like a welfare system. So how do we manage this?
What kind of rules are you referring to?
Well, the rules are basically you have a timeline to get yourself together. We're giving you 5 years. We're giving you 3 years. We're giving you income. You may do what you want to do with it in that time frame, but if you have not accomplished getting out of your situation, you're going back into the situation you were in before. There's no real freedom. There's no creativity.
You're talking about the pilots that we have seen thus far, for the most part, here in the States. The UBI pilots and deployments are if I'm hearing you right, they're very narrow, they're restrictive. They have rules of engagement as to who can be involved and who cannot be involved.
Absolutely.
And they have a lifetime where it goes away after a certain time.
And it has happened in Canada also. When some of the people were really getting on their feet, all of a sudden they just pulled the rug from under them. They had no more income. They were almost finished. Some of them were drug addicts, and some of them had medical problems. They were almost to a point where their lives were changed, and then it was no more. So where do we go with that when we have such a structure? The government is still in it. There's no real free. Can you address that?
Well, I think the basic income model has, has 5 elements. It's universal, it's individual, it is periodic, which is monthly, and it is only cash in the national currency and not any coupons. And the real cutting edge is unconditional. Okay. Now, I think some experiments may fall short of this kind of a gold standard. To the extent they move away from this ideal basic income, I think the problems will begin. But I think unconditional is really, so any experiment is definitely by definition limited. So, but I think the transparency there is the most important thing. Now, I'll give a small example of, I think what an experiment can achieve is limited. It is not a complete scaling up in the society. This is to give a taste of it. In fact, when we did our pilot study in India in 2014, we completed. And after 5 years, we went back to one village where the effects were most prominent, a tribal village, an indigenous tribe. There, the results of our study was most prominent. After 5 years, when we went there, we saw that some of those fantastic changes continued and some have not. So what is the conclusion we draw from this? We draw from this conclusion, the conclusion that even if you give for a short period of time, when people experience something like this, it is going to have an impact on their minds. It's going to have an impact on their lives. I think to the extent they can continue that propulsion, the power of propulsion, I think that anti-gravity propulsion, if they can continue, and there's a desire to continue, I think it would definitely lead them on a positive spiral. Because that experience of unconditionality is the most important thing. Really the important thing. So I think an experiment can only be that it can achieve only that much. An experiment cannot. Okay, in Kenya, Give Directly wants to do 12 years. Okay, that's the farthest it could go. But at the end of the day, I think the entire the country and the society should think like that and implement that unconditionality. So I think unconditional is so even as we, okay, just one more last point. Even as we look at this as giving cash to people unconditionally, on the one hand, it has material impact on their lives. On the other hand, it opens a new conversation, a new narrative. And that narrative actually begins to interrogate the existing way we live. I mean, in fact, that conversation, that new conversation and the new narrative and new ways of thinking is extremely important, both at the individual level, at the household level, and at the community level. So as we were saying, I think Enno was also saying that unconditionality is really, really the cutting edge. Really, I think to experience unconditionality is something amazing, amazing, that you're valued just for your sake. It doesn't matter if you're a drug addict. Doesn't matter. Whatever you are. I think the whole point is that the existing system is so punitive, so punitive. Even if you suboptimally participate in the labor market, it is punitive. It wants to punish you. But I think the unconditional thing is not talking that language. It's talking a different language. And I think it's important, to the extent possible, I think we have to build that new language and new narrative and the new grammar of living.
Okay. So you're supportive of even having an experience, even if it's short. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, that's all an experiment can do.
Mm-hmm. And I think to the point that's been emphasized both by Davala as well as Enno, the thinking of society, of people, has to evolve, has to change for UBI to really take hold in a bigger, fundamental, more permanent way. The Davala talking about love coming to the public square, I think that's so important, as opposed to, where we are now, just consumerism and materialism. That's why this show is so important, and other shows like it, where we are talking about these issues and starting to probe people's minds, hopefully, and open up the thinking so that folks can get out of the patterns that have been kind of drilled into us from grade school and further reinforced by the media, and begin to think on our own, and in particular, to begin to think beyond our own selfish individualism to the whole social welfare of our fellow man. And I mean, that's just a long way around, Diana, of answering your question as to, these limited programs. How do we move from that to something bigger? From what I'm hearing from the experts here and from what I've observed, it's going to take an evolution in our thinking, in our consciousness. And hopefully some of the things that are going on are kind of going to, I hope, jumpstart and kind of propel that consciousness evolution. I think in many ways, this pandemic has done that. I think it's kind of opened people's eyes to our connectedness and to our mutual dependencies, and to the fact that we really do live in a global society. We just can't isolate ourselves in our own little community. We are really all connected. I think the pandemic is driving that home. So I'm at least hopeful that the thinking is going to evolve a little more quickly because of that. We've just got a couple more minutes, so I'd like to hear any closing remarks from Enno and Sarath before we wind up the show.
I just want to quickly bring to focus look at the example of South Korea. 2016, there was a mayor of a particular city called Songnam, and he was interested in basic income. He said that this is a good idea. So he started an experiment with a population, a subset of population, 18 to 21-year-olds. He said, I'm going to give for 1 year. I mean, I'm going to give, the moment you're 18, you will get some money until you're 21. And after that, you won't. So this is, he implemented that. In a very partial way, it's not a universal basic income, but in a subset of population, yes, universal. Similarly, I think after that he became a governor of a big province, and there he implemented it for other subsets of populations like farmers or something else. And during COVID, he also proposed one big relief emergency basic income. Anyway, now he is now the leading presidential candidate for the ruling party, Democratic Party. And in fact, you can go and see on the Basic Income BI News website that he has released a manifesto. He wants to, if he becomes the president, he's going to implement a universal basic income in South Korea for everyone. Universal.
Wow.
I mean, I can share that with you. We are writing about it and we are talking about it. We are planning some seminars before the elections. Elections are in March. So by next June or so, we will know if he wins. There you are. So I think all these things add to this big conversation. And I think when somebody is convinced like that, he's going to implement it. So I value every small experiment, even as an individual, Diana, as an individual, me, individual Enno or Stu, if you go and pick a random person and say that, okay, I'm going to give you $10 a week unconditionally. I think that is also, that's what we were talking last time about a community basic income. It's not about a policy alone. It's also about the way we think, the way we relate today. I think that has to change into something better. Yeah,
Well, yeah,
comments.
I think it's about experiences. I got an unconditional subsidy from a foundation in 2000 something. And that was a huge experience for me. It was unconditional. And I asked him, yeah, but for what is it? So, I was skeptical. Is it like mafia? You get money and then you have to do something you don't know him before? And I asked again, even if I knew the people, but I was skeptical. So because I was used to get money for a painting I'm selling or for something I'm ordered to do. And then finally, the donor of that foundation said, Enno, shut up. It's because we love you. And I thought, okay, whatever that is. I think it is important to do the things you want to do. And if that is a pilot project, and even if it's very, very limited and it can be criticized, it creates experiences. It is changing something, even if there can be critics on test projects. And some people take the results and then turn it around and telling you, oh, that was not successful because those who got the basic income did not look for employment enough, or there are not more employees now, and that is therefore it's a stupid experiment. So we are living in a wild world. That's my experience. So we have rules and something looks like civilized, but the truth is it's a real wild world. It's real wilderness, and people are bringing lies to the idea. People misuse the idea, and it's always disappointing, and so on and so on. So, and it's helpful to understand. One is the idea of a universal unconditional basic income. That's an idea. That's perfect. If it comes to earth, it don't comes from top to down and then it's on earth. It's an inspiration for people. It gives power for people to say, wow, that is good. I want to build that, to try that. So it's not the idea is coming down to earth and then perfect, and let's wait on it. So maybe it needs some weeks or some. No, it will never come down to earth. It's an idea. It's happy to be an idea. It comes to earth by those people, everybody who is doing something for it. And then it grows from the bottom up. And then it strengthens the idea, and that makes the idea happy. Wow, yeah, it's good. It looks like me, but it's done by people, It's always we are the people. We are the creators. We are doing that. And that is always not perfect. No experiment can be perfect. And if an unconditional basic income will be introduced, maybe in South Korea, It will not be perfect. It's like democracy. It's like abolishing slavery. It's like everything we have. Everything was, in the beginning, people got it as a wow idea. And it's always linked to humanity. It's always linked to human values, spiritual truth and being. And then people work on it, and that needs time. And finally, everything has to be created by you and me and other people. And there's no difference, nothing with power. So the statesmen are always the last one who do something. And those who are very comfortable in their rich villas don't do it. So we do it, and we do it step by step and individual by individual. And it's great if we can connect and we can do something together. So understand that the idea will not fall down to the earth and everything is perfect. Never. It will always be what we are doing, and that's our life. And at the end of our life, it's interesting. It was really meaningful if we have had a lot of effort for those things we appreciate.
Wow. Okay, Diana, you've got the last word. We're about out of time.
Very good. I just want to say it's true what I think it was Sarath said, that UBI will benefit the whole rather than the few. And that's what our goal is.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I want to thank everyone. Our special guest, Sarath Davala, zooming in from India. Enno Schmidt, our co-host, zooming in from Germany. And Diana Blackwell, our co-host, zooming in from Harlem. This has been Community and Technology and our monthly show on Unconditional Basic Income. Thanks for tuning in to WHCR 90.3 FM. Have a great holiday and a fulfilling new year. Stay tuned for more on 90.3 FM. Good night.
Thank you.